Allie, you probably said this, but are you clicking through the slides or am I doing that during?
Emily is.
So you're welcome to just say next slide and we'll take it from there.
Great.
Good evening. As folks are coming into our session, I'm going to give us a few minutes to have attendees come in. And I will just check in every once in a while to reiterate that, but we'll give it about 5-10 minutes depending, because we do have quite a few folks registered and I want to make some time for everyone to come in. Good evening, folks. As everyone's coming in, just to share, we will give it a few more minutes to let people get the link and get attached before we kick off our event this evening. Thank you for coming. We're so excited to start these workshops this evening, and I will be with you in just a few moments. And good evening again. Just again, noting for folks who've just joined, we are waiting a few minutes to let people come into the call, and we'll be kicking off in about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, good evening. I am going to get us started tonight so we can stay on track as people are coming in. Thank you everyone for registering, for joining. As we have shared, this is the first in the free professional development workshop series for artists. This is under the PAiD Public Artists in Development Program, which is a program of the County of Los Angeles's Arts and Culture with funding from the Mellon Foundation and delivery and support with Dyson and Womack. My name is Emily Womack. I will be joining you in hosting this session tonight with my colleagues, Allie M., Pat Gomez, and Brianna McGillivray. And we are very excited to be here. This has been a while in the making. This is a first for the county and for us in this orientation. And part of what we're doing is trying to assess how best we can provide information and resources. At the end of this session, our email address will come up. We are always welcome to hear feedback, to hear your interests, your ideas, and if there are better ways that we can host these sessions as we enter this series. We have 15 online workshops coming over the next about 2 months that cover so many topics around the field of public and civic art. And I encourage you to attend as many as you can if this is a field that you are interested in. We will be having many guest presenters joining us tonight, not tonight, I'm sorry, over the course of the presentations, and really covering a lot of topics. As I said, my name is Emily Womack. I also want to highlight that we are recording this session tonight for the posterity and because we will be hosting these as resources on the PAiD website afterwards. So if you weren't able to attend, or if you have to leave early, or if you have friends who wanted to attend and weren't able to, these resources will be available and will be available for free to watch in the future. And we will make sure to put out notices when they do become live on the PAiD website. So just a little reminder there that they are being recorded. And again, welcome. And we hope tonight will be an informative session. We'll provide you some information about the topic we're covering today. We're starting at the beginning, applying. That's where we're starting. It's not the beginning for all of the commissioners. There's a lot of work that goes into getting to the point where artists can apply for public art or civic art commissions, but it's the beginning for many of you when you come into contact with these opportunities. And our intention for this evening is to share some tips, some best resources, some best practices, try to provide some context around and then really open it out to questions with you all. How we will be running all of these sessions is as a conversation. So much of this program is about creating community, creating dialogue, and building a network of support. And to that effect, we will be presenting for about half of the session. The second half of the session will be open to Q&A. We will be doing that Q&A through the Zoom Q&A button. You can find that when you're logged in. You're welcome to put your questions in there at any point during the conversation, during the presentation, or at the end if you want to put them in, and then we'll go through and answer them. It's really important to us that we try to directly respond and hear your questions, the things that you're thinking about, because they may not be what we've put on these slides. They may not be what we've thought of, and we want to make this as generative of a space as possible. We are also, as I said, joined tonight by Pat and Brianna from our LA County Arts and Culture. Together, they co-manage the PAiD program for LA County Arts and Culture. And as this is our first session, they are joining us tonight so that they can give a little bit of background on the program, the PAiD program overall. It's many different elements, not just these workshops. And so we're really pleased that they could join us tonight and share a little bit of that background of what the other opportunities are and how else you can be involved in the PAiD program. After that, we will be previewing just a few of the upcoming workshops, and then we'll jump into this one. My colleague Allie M, who's on this call, and I will be sharing some information, like I said, and then we will open it up to the Q&A until we've gone through the questions. So I will start now by handing this over to Pat and Brianna.
Thank you so much, Emily. Hi, everyone. I can't see your lovely faces, but I'm so pleased to hear about all the registrations and the interest in this program. We're just beyond excited to be at this point. As Emily said, it's been such a long time coming, getting here. It's been such a labor of love for me personally. I began working on this program back in 2018, and through a lot of support and encouragement from my boss, Grace Ramirez-Gaston, and executive leadership in the department, namely Kristen Sakota, wrote the grant proposal for this program that was accepted by the Mellon Foundation. So it's been many years in the making. But as Emily said, we just kind of want to go through just a bit more about the program background and overview so that you can learn about other ways to participate and get excited with us. If you can, yeah, just stay there. So as the name suggests, the program PAiD is all about deepening the department's work around promoting the equity, access, and inclusion of diverse artists in LA County, but specifically through an economic lens to consider the professional resources and supportive structures that we as a department can provide all of you artists as you excel in your professional endeavors. The name of the program is intentional. It's meant to be playful and irreverent, yes, but also deeply earnest and urgent. So, you know, we know how hard it is to survive as an artist, let alone thrive. And as a government institution, we also know that we have a tendency to communicate in opaque language and excessive use of acronyms that nobody knows what they mean, which in their own right have a tendency to exclude and put a lot of people off. So with the name PAiD, we wanted our motivations and programmatic goals to speak loudly for themselves and to be clear and relatable and fun. And we also, you know, wanted to say something about what we hope to achieve. And that's not only about just, you know, promoting diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives just for the sake of filling inclusion deficits around participation. We don't want to just stop at the idea of representation for representation's sake. We want to meaningfully engage an array of voices and perspectives and think critically about how we can really support all artists on a unique journey and what sort of supportive structures and cultural shifts need to take place to make that happen. So if you can actually, yeah, that's the right slide. So just a little bit about how we got here. As I said, back in 2018 is when I started working on the program. Civic art as a division had been involved in conversations for years before that with individual artists, with community members, with colleagues. And together we are sort of realizing that there was a variety of significant barriers that were getting in the way to artists participating in our programs and our project commissions. So as we began thinking about them, it helped inform our program design. So I'm going to just run through a few of these. This is obviously not an exhaustive list. You can tell us, later about what you've experienced, what's missing. But essentially, some really important ones that we wanted to consider are, the exclusive entry requirements that exist. So because of the complexity of many public art projects, You know, artists have to show a high degree of aptitude and knowledge and existing experience to even qualify for opportunities. Related to this is a structural bias that often prioritizes certain indicators of artistic excellence that are defined by graduate degrees, you know, commercial gallery representation, and other signifiers of success. Artists, through no fault of their own, also often possess, you know, inadequate knowledge of the public art system. And because there isn't like a standardized way of, you know, how public art works in each different kind of county, city, state level, it adds a lot of time required for artists to learn how systems work in different places. And then, you know, artists that don't have studio managers or much of a supportive base in their practice often find public art calls too time intensive to even make time for applying or to be able to afford to set aside time for. Related to this, artists often lack, you know, certain business and organizational skills that they would need to manage large-scale capital art projects, which can take anywhere from 1 to 3 years to complete and involve a variety of other stakeholders for the artist to work with. There also aren't often resources available in public art agencies to promote creative growth and experimentation, which is a problem for the field because it limits the creativity and the innovation that can happen in public art relative to other areas of the art markets. And lastly, we found that outreach strategies, you know, in the past often were limited at best, and sometimes they only focused on, you know, engaging artists that were already at a certain level of success. You can flip to the next slide. So in shaping, you know, this program and putting together the goals that we wanted to achieve, we identified, you know, the following kind of benchmark commitments or goals that we'd like to move forward toward, and they include commissioning diverse artists from diverse backgrounds, artistic practices, and communities. We want to create opportunities for underrepresented artists to gain hands-on experience navigating the public art fields, but at the same time, equip artists with transferable skills, tools, and resources that they can use to succeed not only in public art, but in other professional creative endeavors. We also want to create opportunities for artist voices to help inform department policies and practices and improve our artist selection, outreach, engagement, and contracting in ways that increase access and inclusion among underrepresented artists. And lastly, we want to amplify artist-led strategies to promote more community partnerships and overall the sustainability of the arts and culture field for artists. So with this in mind, I'm just gonna quickly take you through kind of the overarching program design and what it looks like. So in the immediate, we want to provide supportive tools for artists to grow through professional development series like this one, Applying to a Public Art Call, which will all be centered around, you know, equipping artists with practical and tangible tips for how they can improve their skills. And then we also want to increase the inclusion of underrepresented artists in civic art through the creation of a more hands-on approach through an apprenticeship program for artists to receive direct training in the civic art process from concept development through design and fabrication. And then the long-term approach is not just about, you know, trying to slot artists into an existing system that could use improvement, but to involve artists in helping us to address wider systemic inequities and challenges in the way that we work and the way that our program services are offered. And so that encompasses bringing artists in through the Artist Council to engage with us in conversations around productive changes that we can make to our process and our services, and hosting ongoing presentations and talks from creative thought leaders about meaningful changes that we can make. I'm gonna pass it on to Pat.
Yes, next slide. So I'm going to take you through the various components of the program, and so you can get an idea of how this particular series that we're involved with, that you're attending right now, how that fits into the overall series of paid opportunities. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start with where we are right now, which is the professional development program. And as you know, or are finding out, these are free workshops. And Emily's going to go through, I think, some of the highlights of upcoming workshops, but basically they're going to cover things like, as this one is applying to public art calls, portfolio presentations. Well, there'll be workshops on contracting. What does it mean to enter into a contract with a government agency? How do you decipher those? Things like budgeting. If you were to get a commission, how do you handle your budget? How do you work with your design development? How do you bring in community engagement into the design development process, and so forth and so on? So that's where we are right now. The next one, the darker blue, that discusses our Artist Council. And we have a cohort of 8 artists who have been selected. Earlier in the year, we had this call, or I guess it was the end of last year, for artists to be participants in this council. And so, as I indicated, we have 8 artists who are part of the council right now. When this session's done, we're going to do it one more time. So if this is something of interest to you, that will be an upcoming opportunity in a couple months or so. The Artist Council is heavily involved in discussions, and what they're doing is they're looking at every aspect of our policies and procedures, and they're identifying areas in which those policies and procedures are inadvertently causing barriers, or making it difficult, or are off-putting to artists. So the idea is that they're going to come at the end of their dialogue series with each other. They're going to provide us with recommendations for how we can adjust our processes to make them more artist friendly. And then also those Artist Council members are each doing a temporary public art program, a project, and we will have that on social media. And upcoming, they're all getting ready to launch. And it's an opportunity for those artists to actually experience a public art project on a temporary level, but experience, what it means to go and create a work on a public property. Then in the orange, this is our artist resource website, where that's probably about a year away, I'd say, but that's going to be designed as a location. We will have all of the videos from all of the sessions from the professional development, but also we want it to serve as a larger resource for artists, for opportunities that are out there, just informational base for artists to assist you to know, what other resources and opportunities that you can access. And then in the red, this one's very exciting, the Public Art Apprenticeship. And this one, I would tell you, keep an eye out, because I'd say it's about maybe a couple months away only, which is going to come by pretty quick. That is an opportunity for artists to apply to be an apprentice. And what that means is that we will select 5 artists this year, and then after this series is done, we'll select another 5. So we'll do it 2 times. And those 5 artists are going to be provided with a permanent public art opportunity. And through that process, they will be mentored, and they will also receive intensive training courses as they go through the process of designing and developing and executing a public art project, they will receive expert help through every single step through the entire process. It's an amazing opportunity. And this public art apprenticeship is only open to artists who have never had a public art commission of any time that's been over 3 years. So if you've been somebody who's been interested in permanent public art but you really don't know where to start, you have no experience, this is an opportunity for you to apply to be an apprentice, at which point you will be basically provided with a public art commission, and you will be trained as you complete that commission. And then the last thing I'm just going to mention is that in the purple down there, you'll see informed by community art leaders discussions. We have been involved with a cohort, a group of leaders who are involved with community arts organizations who have been servicing artists for many years and have a very clear understanding of what the challenges are of artists. So they've have informed us in the development of this entire program. So it's a lot, and we're excited. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Emily.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you, Brianna. I really appreciate that overview. And also the teeing up of information about the apprenticeship, which I know people will have lots of questions about and be really interested in. We will be able to share more information about that with you all via the emails. And I encourage you to go to the PAiD website page at LA County Arts and Culture and sign up for the PAiD e-blasts. You will receive direct information about the apprenticeship and other parts of this program through that e-blast. So that's a really great way to keep abreast of what's going on, as well as looking at the Dyson and Womack Instagram. We are going to be posting lots of information about the upcoming workshops, of which you are seeing a few here. So we are very excited about this program, as we've been sharing, and it is really, I think I really appreciate Pat and Brianna, you sharing that background of the program and the different elements, because I think it's very important to talk about like the change areas and then the addressing where we are, and a lot about these workshops is kind of taking that moment of addressing where we are. The application process is certainly right for improvements and changes and all of that, but also there's opportunities all the time right now. And so this program in its current instance is about equipping artists with those in the now, in the immediate resources to try to provide as much support and as much resources for addressing the field of public art. And I keep saying public art / civic art. I am going to go through a lot of terminology, as Brianna also highlighted. The world of public and civic art has a lot of government terminology, and civic art is one of those that's interchangeable for public art. But what we know more generally is public art. The LA County uses the word civic art for their department, so that's why I keep mentioning that. But on Wednesday, we have our next session that is preparing a portfolio for public art. We will be joined by Irene Georgia Satsos. She is a curator, a writer, an artist herself. For many years, ran the Armory, among a whole host of interesting experiences and backgrounds across LA. She'll be joining us in dialogue in that conversation. That is followed quickly in the next week by our session on contracts, the most exciting topic, of course, but also a really relevant and really important one. If you want to work in this field, if you're interested in working in this field, I really recommend attending that session. It's such a key element to how we navigate this field. Followed by developing project budgets. I will say the developing project budgets and the public art proposals are all going to be, those are both going to be done twice. So there's 2 opportunities in the second half of this series for you to join that session and that discussion. And then communicating designs for public art commission is really about design development. And the last one, my video is blocking it. Public art opportunities. We're going to talk about that one as specifically a little bit later. That is a great session that you are going to be able to hear from many, many different commissioning organizations, not just LA County Arts, but actually many of the cities and the agencies like Metro and airports that commission artists in the Southern California, LA County landscape. So if you want to learn about current opportunities and how you can be abreast of those, that's going to be a really great session for that. Okay, so what we're actually here for, the session for tonight, applying to public art open calls. This was the publicly shared language that we put out about this session. I think hopefully we will do each of the things that we say we intend to do tonight. It is kind of a primer. It may be some things that some of you already know. It may not be. We are going to be interweaving across this series very practical knowledge, very practical skills, and also directly targeting some of this dialogue towards earlier career artists. And then we will also be interweaving in further sessions some of that more theoretical conceptual questions about the nature of public art, the role of public art, why we do this in our communities, what we hope to see from it, what we hope to gain from it. Tonight's session kind of falls a little bit more on that practical side, where we're really wanting to lay a foundation for applying. If you have taken your first step, how you might take a second step, a third step, how you might apply for further or more higher value, dollar value contracts. And then also if you haven't taken that first step yet, what things to consider and how you might actually feel like you're able and prepared to take that next step and apply to a public art open call. Also, this is me. I know these are going online later, so we had to include all of our details just to share a little bit about who we are. Again, I'm Emily Womack. I am co-founder of Dyson and Womack and a public art consultant. That means that I do things like this. I also run open calls. I also sit on open call selection panels. I also work with artists directly on commissions that they've run. So tonight we're presenting because we have a lot of experience in this space and have seen it from many different angles and many different backgrounds, particularly in Southern and California in general. I am joined tonight by my colleague, Allie M., a project manager at Dyson and Womack.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I'm Allie, and I'm very excited to be here with you tonight.
Thank you, Allie. Allie has been an immense support on the part of the Artist Council that we have been working on with PAiD, and will be joining me in many of these sessions. She brings so much practical knowledge and experience. Allie has managed and supported artists through many different projects, including one of the first ever digital public art collections for the state of California, which was a great program that she did a lot of work on. And so I'm grateful to have her here tonight. Okay, so let's get into the meat of it. And let's start with just some definitions. What is an open call for artists? An open call is typically a 1 or 2 stage competitive process. I am going to give some caveats tonight, and part of that is I am not speaking as a staff member at LA Arts and Culture. We are talking a little broadly about how things typically run, kind of run, sort of run, because we want to equip you to be able to take this knowledge into as many opportunities that you may find and be interested in. So I just wanted to highlight that. This may not be exactly how the county does everything that they do, but I think it's really helpful to kind of take that medium pathway that kind of looks at how things typically run. Of course, every agency and every commissioning body is a little different. But typically, open calls for artists are a competitive process. That means it's an application-based process where people are competing against one another to win the commission. And we talk about it as a 1 or 2 stage process. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of work that goes before it gets to this point with commissioning agencies, identifying where an opportunity for art might go, putting together the call for artists, developing the group that's going to be the selection panel and committee. But tonight we're going to be looking just at that part of a call has gone out and it's open to artists to apply, what to expect, and how to best how to put a best foot forward with an application. A few things on definitions. The initial call for artists is typically called an RFQ. You may have seen this, you may have come across that. That language means request for qualifications. It is typically looking for less information than a request for proposals, which is often the second part of that process. Tonight, we are going to focus a lot on the first part of the process, the request for qualifications. The RFP will feature more in our second iteration of this session, which we will be doing later, and I don't have that date to hand. But we can put it in the Q&A, and it's also on the website with the county. Many things that typically request for qualifications ask for CVs, past letter works, portfolios, letters of interest. We're going to go through each of those tonight. Then there will be a shortlisting process. If we're doing a 2-stage process, the body or the group that is reviewing the applications may shortlist that, selecting a smaller number of artists that are invited to respond to the RFQ, to the RFP, to develop a proposal for an art opportunity. It's also best practice that at that stage, artists receive a stipend because more work is being asked. You're actually being asked to develop a proposal, to put resources and time towards that. Not that there aren't resources and time towards RFQs. And that's an area we can talk about, and the time and the resources and how that might lead as a barrier. And then also, yeah, so they're typically provided a stipend. I also just want to highlight that there are other avenues that artists can be selected for commissions that are sometimes used by selection agencies. Mostly governments work in the RFQ, RFP world that I was just articulating. But there are sometimes opportunities for a limited competition. That may be when a commissioning agency has maybe engaged a public art consultant like us and asked us to share a short list of artists already that are invited to go straight into that P part, that proposal part. Often that's actually a really great space to get new voices involved because we can reach out to artists who may self-select out or not participate. But that is another avenue where a curatorial approach is taken in terms of selecting an initial shortlist that are invited to make proposals. Again, those proposals should be funded. There's also a direct commission. Again, this is less used with governments, but it does pop up every once in a while where you might be actually directly addressed and invited to be awarded a commission without a competition process. Again, oftentimes see these where there's like a really, really complicated site or a really specific type of work that would fit there. And so there has to be kind of a direct approach in that sense. Probably less related, again, in government agencies, there's typically a requirement for that competitive process. Hand it over to Al.
So finding open call opportunities. These are just a few ways that we have put together to search for an open call online. They're not the only ways, but we have found that artists commonly use them. And then again, we just want to highlight that we will be having the opportunities workshop that is specifically designed for artists to, or for artists to come, and then various agencies across LA County are going to come together and share and directly engage with artists, answering questions about current opportunities and resources available. So then one of the ways to find an open call are listings and postings. So listings and postings are online platforms or websites that share open calls, RFQs, and RFPs. The four listed here are just examples. There's plenty more online, but I have seen that we commonly use these websites. And then the next is signing up for commissioning agencies' email lists. So this means that you're subscribing to their newsletter to get updates on current projects or upcoming projects and upcoming open calls. Another method is following social media tags. So that means that you're going on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, and you're searching these hashtags to find open calls. And then this is a new one I learned recently, but Google Alerts. And it's basically a way to track keywords online and get sent to your inbox. So if you want to track public art, you'll get postings online gathered from the web just straight into your inbox.
Thanks, Allie. I really like that last one because I think one of the barriers is that oftentimes artists find out about an opportunity when it's like a few days away from the deadline, which doesn't set people up for success. And if you can automate the way that you find out about these opportunities, then hopefully you'll hear about them when they first get posted and have the opportunity to be more involved and to have more time.
Yep.
That leads well into our next slide, which is, how do I know if I actually should apply? And I think that it's really, some of these are pretty straightforward, like read the open call carefully. But I want to say, like, what I mean by that and is like, take it at face value. There's that quote, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And that's often used in a negative way, but in a positive way too. What an agency puts out in its call is very representative of how they operate, what they're thinking. And so take time to really look at it. Does it feel inviting and welcoming? Does it feel like an opportunity that you're excited about, interested in? Do the eligibility guidelines feel clear? Do they tell you, who's available? Are there things that they're not, sometimes it's regionally local. So taking that time to carefully read the open call, the RFQ, is a great way to kind of, first of all, just go, yes, no, I'm interested, I'm not interested. This is a space that I feel good about. This is not a space that I feel good about. And I think it's important to trust your gut in those areas because public art is a long process. You could be working on some of these projects for several years. This is your first opening introduction to this agency or commissioning body. And it's wonderful to really take time and think about if that's something that you're aligned with on how they're talking about the opportunity, how they're talking about potential community engagement, how they've presented themselves to you through this opportunity. Also considering the application requirements. There are some standard ones that we're going to go through next, and we're going to talk about, some of the ways to approach those different ones, but different calls have different requirements. We've seen some that seem really crazy with what they're asking for, others that are more appropriate. And I will say, I think the county does a great job of putting theirs together. But it's good to look at the application requirements and make sure, really say, do I have time to do this? Do I have time to put a portfolio together? Do I have time to write this letter of interest? To really put that time together. Leads into the reviewing your capacities, not just your capacity to apply, but if you were to win the commission, your capacity to take it on. Again, as I've shared, it's a few years long sometimes, probably at most, at least a few months. If it's a design only, maybe it's less, but it is a commitment. And so it's important to think about whether you're ready to take on that commitment, whether it fits with what you have going on. And again, whether you're interested in it. There's a lot of opportunities that come out, but I think one of the baseline is, does this resonate with me? Is this opportunity have some kind of connection to my work, to who I am, to places that I have lived or been? to values that I hold. I think that that's a really essential way to look at whether or not something is worth you putting your time into. Oftentimes also agencies will host a pre-application information session, usually a webinar of some sort. If you find out about the opportunity early enough, if you are able to attend, that is a really great way, again, to hear directly from that agency. It's their job to sell at you at this point, to say, this is what we're offering, you know? So it's a great way to hear from them what they're thinking about, what they're looking for. There also are with RFQs, there's often a window, a specific window when you can ask questions. If you miss that window, most agencies are also required and do release the questions and answers that they receive. So even if you've missed the opportunity to ask a question, you can usually download the Q&A part of questions that artists did ask. A lot of times you're going to find your question already on that list. So also reading those Q&As, if you've missed the question time is a great way. If you haven't, putting in the questions. Again, the time period and the reason that there's a limited time for questions is often about equity, making sure everyone has the same opportunity to ask a question and everyone has the opportunity to read the responses to those questions. And then I think this speaks to kind of what we're trying to talk about here is building confidence and building, you know, if you've taken that time to consider this is something that feels within reach for me. I have the capacity to do the application. I have the capacity to potentially take on the opportunity. I have the capacity to deal with the application process. We're going to talk about that in a slide in a second. But the application process itself is a lengthy process. And many people apply to these opportunities. So the chances of getting it are not huge. And I think it's a really great way to think about, like, do I have the capacity to do this work and maybe not get this? Would I find that as something that might help me? You know, I want to do this. I want to take this next step because I want to put this together so I have it ready for future opportunities. I think balancing those considerations. And then once we do, stepping in with that confidence of saying, yeah, I can do this. I've decided to put this forward. Artists, I know, often feel that this is a space that, like, you're the ones knocking at the doors of these big agencies. They're reliant upon your creativity, your work, and they want to hear from you. They're asking to hear from you. And it is a pleasure and it is an honor every time I have sat in a review panel to be able to see the work that artists have been willing to share with us. And so I just want to highlight that a reminder that, like, we are grateful when artists apply to our open calls and take it seriously and consider what we have asked for. And there can be some confidence in knowing that you're responding to something that people have asked for. Overview of an application and selection process. So I did quickly want to just walk through what a typical, every agency is a little bit different, but what you can typically expect to see in this process. Again, it is typically upwards of a 6 to maybe 8 month process in some cases to go through all of this. So that it is a waiting game in many instances. But the steps are fairly straightforward in their typical sense. An open call will be released, a request for qualifications by its other terminology. The agency will put that out, inviting artists to apply. They might hold a pre-session, as I've mentioned, or have a questions open and answer time, but then there's a time period where artists are able to submit their applications. Once they are submitted, there's a committee that is brought together. And again, every agency might have different rules about how they bring these committees together. Selection committees typically are representative of an arts professional, someone from perhaps the community that the artwork is going to exist within, someone from the commissioning agency, people from, if it's related to a development or a build, a new build of a building or an exterior space, someone related to that, like an architect or a landscape architect or a construction developer might be on that. But there will be rules, and also the RFQs that go out oftentimes do provide some information about this process as well, the selection process as well as the criteria by which they evaluate. So again, that goes back to really looking at the RFQ. The committee comes together, they review the submissions, and they will identify a short list of artists that they will invite to prepare proposals. In the instance that we're showing here, if it all runs as a classic typical example, those artists would be provided a stipend and then asked to prepare a proposal. As I've mentioned, we will go more into the proposal stages in future webinars and future sessions. But for now, I'll just say that that proposal is where you actually are saying, this is what my idea is for this commission. This is what I might do. You're also developing perhaps further your team, and we'll talk about that as well. And then once all of the proposals are received, the selection committee again reviews the proposals and awards the commission.
So the RFQ requirements are part of the application phase. And we just wanted to go over a few definitions of the traditional requirements that are requested in an RFQ open call. The first being a letter of interest. And just like it sounds, it's a brief letter that articulates the artist's interest in the commission. It should highlight your relevant experience or qualifications, explain why you would be well suited to the opportunity, and it should provide information on why your artist practice is relevant to the commission opportunity. The next one is a CV, and we'll go more into this later on in the slides, but an artist CV is different from a professional CV. This artist CV is a detailed record of their artistic accomplishments and professional experience. It's a tool that artists can use to introduce themselves to galleries, curators, and commissioners, and to apply for professional opportunities. And then third, a portfolio. The artist portfolio, it's a record of their artwork that showcases their specific style and method of creation. The portfolio might include documentation of past or completed artworks. It can include installations, sketches, audio files, and video recordings. Usually, the open call will clearly state what format and quantity and other requirements are necessary for the portfolio submission. Next, references. References are artistic or professional peers, and references are sought to provide further insight into artist capacities and track record. Some open calls specify that the references should come from previously completed projects and may be accompanied by a request for the exact project details, and the role and relationship between the artist and the reference on the project. And sometimes some RFQs, as Emily mentioned, they all vary. There are special requests or requirements, and these may be due to legal requirements of the commissioning agency or just based on a desire to hone in on a certain aspect of the project or gather information. What is all true across all application processes is that regardless of the requirements, attention to detail is key. Accurately and fully providing what is requested is essential to remaining in consideration. So we always suggest to artists to give yourself enough time to read through the requirements and to always double check your application before you submit.
Yeah, it's really sad when we get applications in that are fantastic but miss a requirement, and this is a space where that attention to detail does matter and can be the difference between being in the second round and not in some cases. Thank you, Allie, for going through that. I also just wanted to highlight before we go into each of those elements in more detail that something that has come up more and more, which is this opportunity to apply as an individual, as a team, or as a team. Commissioning agencies often do allow artists to apply either way at the RFQ stage. You know, public art is a super collaborative space. You will, if you're commissioned and selected, you will be building a team. You will be putting together a team that includes many other folks. That isn't exactly what is meant at this point. I think what most agencies are looking for at this point is, you know, are you a collaborative duo of 2 or more artists who work together to create the design concept? If you do choose to apply as an artist team, it is really important to show how your work might blend together, because that group of selected artists or the selection committee is looking at your portfolios and they're trying to think, what might this person hypothetically propose if we were to invite them? Can we see the trajectory of how their work might go, how they might be interested in addressing this space? And if you have 2 folks with really different backgrounds and aren't really showing how they might combine, it can be a tough leap for the selection committee to make. So I just want to highlight, you know, this isn't the case in all instances, but oftentimes if you are applying as a team, it's smart to be able to show that how your work would blend, either because you have done that before or to really take the time to address how you would do that. So you're building in some confidence around that. And as I mentioned, once you get further along in that process, there is a different type of team. There is a project team that comes together to support. That might include an engineer, a fabricator, or 2 or more, a designer, a landscape designer, sometimes even an architect, lighting designers, and certainly project managers. I'm sure there's others. Again, we'll go into that part about building those project teams a bit later, but I do want to highlight the difference between an artist team where you're collaborating on design and a project team where you're building that team to really support the making of the work, which is a more appropriate place in the RFP stage. Okay. So we're taking each of the sections that Allie kind of overviewed for us a few slides back. And as I said, these are typically what you might see requested. Historically, this has always been a letter of interest, a written letter of interest. I will say many agencies are opening this out to be videos as well, where you can respond via prompt in a recorded video. Regardless, I think the fundamentals of this kind of stay the same. And we put together some top level do's and don'ts. One strong do is definitely take a moment to share why you're interested in this project. And I think that speaks to what I was saying earlier about identifying whether an opportunity is a good fit. If you look at something and you're like, I don't know how this relates to my work, I don't know how this relates to the themes that I address, the work that I do, it's going to be hard for the selection committee to take that leap as well. And so in the essence of like being smart with time and being smart with resources, I think it's good to prioritize applications where you do have a really strong interest in it and highlight that interest for the committee, for the selection committee. Do display knowledge of the commission opportunity. Do show that you've taken that time and you have read it and you understand it. You don't have to write, you know, back exactly what they've put in it, but I think it is smart to show that there is some knowledge there. If you haven't done a lot of public art or any public art, and at the end of this session, we are going to spend a few minutes talking directly to artists who've never applied to public art before. But I think it's smart in the letter in some cases to highlight how your work might translate into materials or mediums relevant to this public art opportunity. Again, we're kind of focusing on what would be considered traditional, like permanent public artworks in this. There are also temporary opportunities that are a little different, little looser usually, but particularly for permanent public artworks, there's materials and mediums that traditionally work in that field. And it could be interesting if your portfolio really displays a lot of different mediums to talk about how you might see your work translating into something that would be a more traditional public art medium. Be clear about what your practice is and how your practice relates to this opportunity, again, thematically and aesthetically. Highlight past projects that showcase your unique skills. Give yourself plenty of time to review and revise. In an ideal world, we would all have that, says the person who was working on this presentation up until the last minute. But I do understand the realities of the world, but it's great when we do have time. That shows. Again, just highlighting this is the space for following directions carefully. Most commissioning agencies literally have rules for procurement. That's the word we use in the government world about procuring something, whether it be a consultant, an artist, a material. And there's a lot of rules around that for good reasons in many cases. But it does mean not following those rules can mean you get dropped from consideration. We only put in 2 don'ts because I want there to be a lot of space here, but these are really 2 important don'ts. At the RFQ stage, at the qualifications stage, don't pitch an idea for the commission. Show your prior works, talk about ways you think about the commission, how you're interested by the commission, but really it's not the time or place to pitch a proposal. It will actually work against you because it's not what the committee is set up to review. So it doesn't actually really fit well into how they're reviewing, and it can actually throw people off. I've never seen it be a good thing for someone to include a proposal pitch, like be really specific about what they want to do at the RFQ stage. So really recommend not doing that. Also, and this is to carefully doing the directions again, but don't go over or significantly under the required page or word count limit, or if it's a video, the length. Usually they'll specify how long the video should be. Those are really important things, especially if we're getting hundreds and hundreds of applications. Going really over or under. Well, if over, you can be disqualified, and really under kind of stands out in not a great way. Oops. This is something that, sticking with the traditional, with where things are now, not where we hope they will be in the future, not this ideal world that is a bit more supportive. And anyway, I'll leave that there. But a letter of interest, this is adapted from a Creative Capital webinar that was done back in 2015 about writing a compelling letter of interest. I do actually think that some of the information in here is pretty on point about like how one could organize that letter of interest, starting out with what we just said, why you're interested in this, how you understand what the agency is looking for, why you feel an affinity for this project, showcase that you may have done some research about it, if you have, and then why you're a good fit. Second paragraph is to more really hone in on your vision. Again, this is not outlining a proposal, but you can drop some hints about like your vision about what public art is, or how your practice works, how you would see that thematically relating to the commission, drawing connections between projects you've done and the opportunity here. It doesn't have to be public art projects. You can draw thematic relationships with studio practice work. And that can be a really great way to actually bridge the gap if you're entering into this space for the first time, is to show that you can speak to how that would translate and relate. And then the third paragraph could be about just, again, tooting your own horn. What makes you unique? What sums up your qualifications? What makes you a great candidate for that commission? I always think it's great to thank them for taking the time to look at it too.
So next we have the CV, the artist CV. And again, we just want to emphasize that it is different from a professional work resume. And what we have shown here is on the left, you have an artist CV, and on the right, you have a regular professional work resume. And these are just example templates. They do not have to look like this. But a crucial factor is that in the artist CB, you don't see non-art related school or employment histories. What you do see is everything related to the artist practice, artist career, and that includes selected exhibitions, awards and honors, publications and media. And you can also include like a separate section just for public art projects. I've seen that a lot in artist resumes in their applications. And you'll see also in the tiny text, but it's your choice to include references or not. If it's available, they usually ask it, they prompt it in like the next section of the application online, but you are also welcome to add it in this in your CV.
Portfolios. We highlighted in green right there. This is the backbone of the application process. It's hugely important. We are going to be doing 2 specific sessions, one on Wednesday of this week, and then again on September 12th, specifically about preparing a portfolio for a public art opportunity. If you want to hear a lot more information about public art portfolios, we encourage you to come to those 2 sessions. However, we did want to include a few top-level do's and don'ts in here in case you're not able to attend those sessions. Again, and I know I sound like a broken record, but following directions is quintessential, super important. Includes listening to what type of file types, the amount, again, going really over or really under. Over would be grounds for disqualification in many cases. Going really under doesn't, has its own issues too. Thinking about file sizes, everything that they're putting out. Please don't submit proposals. Again, don't submit sketches of proposals, renderings of proposals. This is at the RFQ stage. They want to see past work. Curate your portfolio to best relate to the art opportunity and scale. You may not have things that are exactly like, and most likely you won't have things that are exactly like. But if you can draw some parallels between ways you have maybe approached certain themes in previous works that might relate to the themes of the art you're applying to, or ways you've approached community outreach or engagement in the past in a way that aligns with what might be being asked for in the open call. I think it doesn't have to be that, oh, I've done a piece that could exactly go in this space before, but thinking about like what themes you've addressed, what ways that you have approached art in the past can help you to define and curate that portfolio. Again, giving yourself time, not just for the portfolio, but oftentimes portfolios require descriptions that go along with them. And that can include a brief paragraph even of writing about the project. It can include the dimensions, the mediums, the budget, the time that you made the work. That can take some time to put together. So factor that in to when you're putting the portfolio together. It's not just the images or the video file, the video files that you need to put together, but if there's a request for descriptions, that might take some time too. And it also may take some time if you don't have just 500 public art examples, because oftentimes those descriptions are couched in kind of a public arty way, where they're kind of looking like they're talking about commissions. And so it might take a minute to think about, well, how do I answer this? How do I say what the budget is, or the commissioning agency if this wasn't a commission, and to think about how you want to present that. And then another thing, always, if you can, is to have someone else look at the portfolio that you trust, give you some feedback. It's super hard to be your own best advocate. I think that's one of the things that I'm always aware of and cognizant of is, the agencies, we have teams, there's people looking at things, checking things, and artists are individuals for the most part, not always. And it can become tough to hear, to put yourself out there in a way. And so if you are able to take a moment and have someone give you that extra bit of support, that's a great thing to do.
And then back to references. So in some cases, commissioning agencies will require references be from past projects only. In these cases, the opportunity, I would consider as an artist, if I'm applying, like if this is a good opportunity for myself, because if they are requiring that the reference is from a previous project, then that most likely means that maybe they want the artist they are looking for is someone with a lot more experience than little. But references include former teachers, again, artistic peers with direct knowledge of your practice, and professional peers or gallerists or commissioners or other project stakeholders from previous projects of yours.
Yeah. This is the one that I think has a lot of difference across agencies. Some
Yeah.
folks don't even ask for it. Others ask for it in this way that Ali was speaking about, you know, wanting it to be directly tied to prior public art calls. It's a really great place to see kind of what an agency might actually be looking for. So do read into that request and do allow that to inform whether you choose to apply or not, whether you feel like you're ready to take that next step. That leads very well into our final 2 slides, and then we're going to open it out to the discussion and questions. So specifically for first-time public art applicants, there are very many reasons why it is daunting to apply. There are also many reasons why it's an exciting idea. I believe very passionately about this field. We have put a lot of time and effort into developing this field because I think when done well, these can be really important opportunities for artists. Unfortunately, there is a side where there are also some missteps, and it is not incumbent on the artists all the time where those missteps line. But I think when you're thinking about entering this field, it's really great to remember that not everything is up to you. There are selection bodies that we've talked about, comprised of many individuals with many different backgrounds, biases, interests, agendas. There are so many factors that come together to reach the commissioning of an artist. And I think it's important when you're first starting out, it can feel like it's such a judgment on your own work and your own thing. And it's really important to note this is not entirely up to you and the work that you put forward. There's so many things that go into selecting a commission. And I think if you can hold on to that, it can give a little bit of space. Also taking steps that feel comfortable, looking at a bunch of open calls before deciding to apply to one, looking at the different tones, the different ways they approach it, looking at the different things they're asking for, all of that. Making sure maybe the first time you apply that you do apply to one where you definitely have the lead time you need. That it's not due tomorrow or 2 days away. There will always be more open calls that come out if you miss one. Again, I think a way to really bridge that gap as a first-time public art applicant is to look for open calls that have a strong personal, social, thematic relationship with. If you don't have necessarily all of the great tons of background of public art experience, that can be a way to kind of bridge that gap with the review panel, where they can see, like, I really understand why this person is saying that this is an application that they want to put forward because they are invested, they care about this, they see how this relates to their practice. I think educating yourself, like attending webinars like this about the role and purpose of public art, is also a really great way you can describe that you understand how public art works in many contexts. And then again, giving yourself compassion and room with your first application. Maybe trying for something on the smaller side, maybe not going for that big, $500 million commission on that first try. Taking some smaller steps, really looking at the application and considering if it's something you want to invest a good amount of time in. Consider in your letter of interest sharing your interest and understanding of public art. how you understand public art might differ from your current approach or practice, how you would see your work changing to meet the needs of a permanent public artwork, again, that moment of fabrication methods, materials, and how your current practice relates thematically and aesthetically to the commission opportunity. There we go. So that was a lot of information for some, probably things that others of you maybe already knew. But we're going to take the last whatever minutes, I'm just 45 minutes till when we run out of questions to hear from you. So the Q&A is open. Some of you have already been putting questions in. Allie's going to help me go through that. And then we will we'll answer those till we run out of questions.
For those that are new to this, the Q&A button is at the bottom of the screen, or it should be. And if you just click it, you can type in your questions. The first couple of questions we got were about eligibility, and they asked, who is this program available to, and is it specific to a city? And the next question was, is the apprenticeship only for LA residents?
Great. So I'm assuming by who is this program available to? We might be talking about the apprenticeship at that point too.
Yeah,
Heather? Cool. If I'm not, let me know. And is the apprenticeship only for LA residents? So we ran the open call for the Artist Council. That was limited to LA County residents only. The county will be putting out the RFQ for the apprenticeship. As Pat shared at the top of this, that will be coming out in the next couple of months, this fall. And I will be honest, I have not seen the final draft of it. So I don't know if it is restricted like the Artist Council was to LA County residents. I assume it will be, but as we all know, assumptions are not always right. So one of the best ways to stay abreast of that is to sign up at the county website for the newsletter specifically about PAiD, so that you will get the call as soon as it goes live. But I would say, I know for certain it's for folks who have not done a government contract before. And I assume, just based on what I know about the program, that it will be limited to LA County artists, but I could be wrong.
Brianna just confirmed in the chat that it is only open to LA County residents.
Thanks, Brianna.
The next question is also about the apprenticeship from Jenny Bate. On the apprenticeship, will it be open to artists who've had existing artworks selected for vinyl wraps, repro, but never had a standard commission or original art bought?
Again, I'm not sure. Maybe if Brianna and Pat are on the line, maybe they could pop an answer into the chat as well on that one. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just do a verbal answer on that one. I don't know exactly what's being referenced here, but, and also the caveat is we don't have the final 100% language approved for the call, because as Emily stated, these calls before they hit the street have a lot of back conversation. But at the moment, we're defining an artist who has no public art experience as someone who has not received a government commission, that had a lifespan expectation of 3 years or more. So if it was a art commission, you've had an art commission with an expectation of under 3 years, you would be eligible. But if it's a commission that was 3 years or more, then those are the artists, because we're really looking for people who have had no success or experience in the permanent public art realm.
Thank you very much, Pat.
Okay, so we had a couple questions about if the presentation will be available online. And the answer is the presentation itself will not be, but there is going to be a recording of this entire workshop available on the county's website.
And that may take a little time. And I will also add that we are going to do this session again. It'll be a little different. We'll hone on a few different things, but we will be doing this session again at the start of the second half of the workshops in September. So there will be an opportunity to participate live.
The second edition of this workshop will be on September 11th.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next question from John Von Burien. Can a general, non-site specific letter of interest be given a green light at the RFQ stage?
Great question. And I think that gets to this tension about the RFQ stage in general, which is how much do we expect artists to do at that stage when there is no funds provided, there's no stipend provided. And if you're applying to a lot of calls, I really understand that making each one specific is not ideal because that takes a lot of time. And if you're really trying to, get out there and win some commissions and build a career, that can be tough. But right now, in the current climate that we are in, I would say non-specific is not, it's not unheard of that it would be selected, but it certainly is a disadvantage at that review from what I have experienced and seen. And I think our other folks would agree that it doesn't hurt even in just one paragraph. We're not talking of, tons and tons, but to provide a little bit of context about why you're specifically interested in this opportunity, why you really think it's a good fit for your work. I think the main reason is there are so many more applicants than opportunities. And so it really is tough to land one. If someone feels like someone's not super committed or is just, shooting it out, that can really be the difference sometimes.
Okay. A question about the CV. How would you advise collating a CV for a collaborative partnership? Should we include our individual CVs in addition to our collaborative CV?
That's a great question as well. And again, points to that thing about artist collaborations as an artist team. I will underscore this by saying, again, always read what they say, because what they say in the call is the letter of the law. We're giving more general advice here, but typically I see that calls ask for individual CVs from each of the artist team members. I really love this idea of the collaborative CV though, because I think it speaks to that thing we were saying about showing that there's a relationship to that partnership. And if it did offer the opportunity to show that, or even if it asks for separate CVs, you could do a section that is like collaborations with, that on each of your CVs calls out specifically the collaborations you have done with the other artists you're teaming up with. I think that's a really great thing to do, even if they don't allow for collaborative CVs. If they are asking for individual ones, to highlight that relationship in it would be a really smart thing.
A question about the letter of interest. Could you share any specific insights about what kind of information commissions are looking for in regards to why the artist is well suited for the opportunity?
Yes, I can try. We can try. And Pat, Brianna as well, if you have things you want to share, go for it. You're welcome to interject as well. I feel like a broken record a little bit saying it's different in every scenario, but it is different in every scenario. But I think what we mean by well-suited could be displayed in a number of ways. and it's in large part about how one positions oneself in that letter of interest as well. I think well-suited could mean I have a really strong connection to, relationship with, thematic tie to. That would mean that I could really knock out this proposal, you know, that it would be very relevant and very appropriate. It could mean I'm well suited to because I have all of the experience that you're looking for. It could mean because I've made similar works, and it could mean because I have the time, the commitment, the passion, and the drive to put towards this. It could mean many or all of those things. You may not have many or all of those things. So I think it's choosing which ones you do have. If you choose to apply, it's looking for what it is that specific to you makes you well suited and highlighting that. If you don't have tons of public art experience, highlighting the relevance of your thematic relevance, of your personal relevance would be important to highlight more at that point. If you do have other experience that's similar in scale or type, obviously you can highlight that. But I think it is kind of a balance of what the individual artist has to be able to highlight in that way. And again, what the call is asking for. You know, if it's a call that's saying you must have completed 4 $300,000 projects before, you know, well, right there, they're telling you one of the ways you're well suited is by having that experience. And there's not going to be, if they're saying it that clearly, there's not going to be much that will get around that. If they're not saying that, if they're saying things like this is open to artists from many career levels, that's kind of code as well for saying we're interested and open to applying potentially to artists applying that are, you know, have less experience. In which case that would be a good opportunity to highlight those other ways that you might be well suited.
Mhm.
I would also like to point out that it can encompass thematic concerns. I know that we are very concerned, you know, and are certainly in the calls that we're putting out now, we put the goals of the artwork and the themes and the values for the work and for the center, because all of our commissions really are for county facilities. So for example, if we have a call that's going out for a mental health center, we will write on that call that we're looking for work that is uplifting and going to contribute to a calming environment, because that's what is needed in that particular setting. And that's just an example. If your work is very frantic, or you know, might be excellent, amazing work, but it has dark themes, that might not make you a match for that particular opportunity. So you would also want to look at the themes and look at what is being put out there in terms of what the goal of the artwork is, in terms of the goals and values for that particular spot, the place, site.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, because I agree with all of those comments. I think like a really quick and simple way to assess whether or not you know, you might be a good fit or candidate for the application is to just take a couple quick steps of first looking at eligibility. Do I even qualify for this opportunity? Then number two, go to the selection criteria section of the RFQ or RFP, because that's going to elaborate more on specifically what is the agency looking for. And then from there, all of, you know, whatever the agency is deciding to base their selection criteria on, the agency has to ask the applicant for that information. So from there, then look to and sometimes they'll spell it out directly, like refer to section 4 for information about the goals. and the values of this project, or refer to section 6 about, site specificity. And so from there, you can go and kind of further tailor your application to show a connection to those particular areas of the selection process. And as Pat mentioned, a big indicator is often, to look at what are the specific goals and values that are outlined in the solicitation document. Because even if you maybe don't have the most public art experience, maybe you're an applicant who has a really strong connection to the community where the project is going to take place. And maybe you make the type of work that would really resonate strongly with the particular, type of work that the agency is looking to commission. So that's kind of like how you can kind of quickly navigate the document and just make a checklist for yourself, like, where you stand up, and then what you can really further flesh out in your CV and the selection of your images, or what you choose to highlight in your letter of interest if it's applicable.
Okay, next question. Can the CV be in paragraph format, more like a narrative, or must it be in a similar format as this? And I'm assuming they're referring to the templates we showed in the presentation. I have always found that it is a bit, it's more legible if it's in the format of the templates. And I would say it should be in a similar format.
Yeah, I do think that that tends to be something people want to move through rather quickly. And it might be seen if it's in a paragraph format, that it's in a way to kind of extend the letter of interest. And I certainly wouldn't want that to go against. That being, there are lots of different ways that artists have put CVs together, and creativity is, we're in that field and we don't want to drain it all out. So I'm certainly not going to say there's no opportunity for that. But again, as we've shared, this tends to be an area where, kind of following the more traditional lines at this current moment can be rewarded. And so I would tend to agree with Allie that maybe a more traditional approach might be the safer bet.
I would like to add that that's one of the areas in which we're really focusing on trying to make it a bit more artist friendly for artists who maybe don't have that same sort of traditional experience. And so we certainly, are open very much to having other types of experience put in that document. Like, for example, if you are an artist in residence at a community location and you're working with community as in overseeing workshops, or let's say you have an active, even you're selling your work at artist fairs and that sort of things. So really, like, this idea that it's only gallery experience, or it's only you've had X degree, that is really something that we're trying to really not put that message out there. We're trying to get away from that. So in our calls, we're trying to have a little bit more accessible language as to what that is, that can go inside of there. For example, maybe you didn't go to college, but you're a muralist, and you had worked with some very significant, important muralists who you've had training on the job, like working with East Low streetscapers or something of that nature. We certainly would want to hear about that.
Next question, are the portfolio workshops different or only different sessions?
They will be slightly different in that we have different co-presenters. So the first time we'll be joined by Irene Georgiatsatsos, as I mentioned, formerly with the Armory and many other places, currently a writer, curator, and artist. She'll be in conversation with us. The second one will have Aska Hissa, who is currently with ICALA, will be joining us. So just by the sheer fact that we have different co-presenters, there will be different things brought to the table, and you'll have the opportunity to hear from both of them, who have huge experience sitting on portfolio selection panels and all types. So if it's an area you're really interested in, you might consider attending both, because you will hear from different co-presenters. But in large part, the substance will be similar.
For portfolio descriptions, would you recommend explicitly stating how the included image is relevant to the art opportunity, scale, theme, media, etc.?
I think the portfolio descriptions are an unsung hero in this application process. They're brief, they're quick. When they're asked for, they're not always asked for. But if they are asked for, I think it's a fantastic way in a very scripted application process to be able to slide in some nuggets that you maybe can't fit in the letter of interest or other things. They're also short and brief usually, and when you're reviewing them, it can be a really kind of breath of fresh air to just quickly read something about the image that sticks out in your mind or surprises you or relates in some way. So I actually think that that's a great opportunity to highlight not only how it's relevant to the art opportunity, but interesting facts and features of your practice. I think that, again, yeah, that's a really great opportunity because you have some freedom in that to kind of make a mark.
We received a couple questions about references. Should references be basic information or letters? And what do you do when references are so old they can't remember you, ... I think references, they're not letters of recommendations or anything. They are just, you put down their contact information, their names, their titles, and what your relationship is to them or why you have this relationship. So putting in like they worked with you on this project or something like that. And then I don't know, Emily, what do we do when the references are so old?
You might need to pick a new reference. In the off chance they do call, I don't know, maybe they don't, but in the off chance that they do, I think it would be really important that the referee be able to speak to your work and to your practice. And I think, that's another area that is prime and ripe for some updating and some equity and inclusion support. Because not everybody has the same references. I know the county is looking at that. I know we're looking at that in our recommendations in the Artist Council. But as it currently stands, as Allie said, it's typically, they're just asking not for the letter, but just for the contact details. In many cases, it is oftentimes a check mark to say, oh, you have a good relationship with someone you worked with in the past. So you might not be difficult or hard, to work with. You might have, good working relationships, and that stands up through the fact that you're including folks that you have prior work relationships with. As I mentioned, with those things don't exist, it can also be support around maybe peers, colleagues, other artists that can speak to your practice and speak to the work that you've done. That can be a really great reference too. It doesn't have to necessarily be a project-based one, although as we highlighted, some places do require that. So bear that in mind. Yeah.
Mhm.
I would also add, I think it's always a good practice, even if you're reaching out to a reference who might very well remember you fondly, but because they maybe work with so many different artists or they're maybe an instructor or a professor that has had a lot of students, it's always nice to just provide them with a background reminder of you know, how you worked with them, in what capacity, on what projects, what dates. I mean, it can just be in bulleted form, but if you do need that reference and, you know, the person you've reached out to is, you know, being really kind and wants to help you, it's just always a good thing to just give them a little bit of background reminder so that they can speak about you or write about you in the best possible light.
I also would like to point out to let you know that we've stopped asking for references on the RFQ level, which is that initial pass background level. We only ask for it from those finalist artists at that point, because again, this goes back to government procurement laws and requirements. And we can't ask for anything on your initial submission that isn't going to be part of the evaluation, which would mean if we get 100 people applying and we ask for references up front, we then would be required to call all the references for those 100 people on that first round, and that is just beyond our capacity. So we only ask for it from that second level, at which point you can have a little bit of assurance of knowing that there's already you're already have been selected to make that second step. There's already a positive feeling about you and your work.
Actually, they just responded to their question. They were clarifying that when they were saying old reference, they meant maybe project references who maybe don't work there anymore.
Oh, then what I would say is you can give the up-to-date reference of where, let's say they worked for one agency and that was the agency you had your previous experience with, and now that individual that maybe was your project manager is now at another location. I've certainly have seen the current information for that person referencing on there that they were the project manager at the agency where they were at the time.
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
A question about resume length. What is the best length? I think Emily mentioned this, but the resume length is dependent on the requirements of the RFQ. It really does depend on what they are asking for. I've seen anywhere between 1 page to no limit. So I would just always make sure that you check the requirements of the open call.
Absolutely. And I don't think there's a best length. I think it's what the agency puts out. And if they don't put anything out, then you should feel comfortable to frame it what you think best represents you.
Okay. Some folks were asking how to get past the first steps. There seems to be nothing between the 500 signal box wraps and 5-figure calls requiring prior examples of the same or similar budget.
Definitely understand that. And I think that is a very fair and accurate critique in this space. It is also something that this program is seeking to address in different ways. One of which by offering the apprenticeship, but also through the work that we're doing with the Artist Council. You know, some of our recommendations are going to be about diversifying opportunities, offering opportunities at more and explicitly different dollar values, and also that require more, that have different requirements about what the artist is expected to do. You know, maybe there's an opportunity that has a smaller value where the artist is only expected to create a design because the fabrication is going to be handled in-house. There's many ways that this could be diversified. Unfortunately, that work needs to be done on the agency side. And I think that what I love about this program, what I'm so proud about being a part of it, and what I'm so grateful that the county has commissioned it how they have, is that there are elements of this program that are looking at that systemic change. It will take some time. There are some opportunities that are less that fall into that sweet spot. Also, temporary public art is bountiful and is a really great space to get a first step in with something that maybe has a more middle ground figure, 100K or less. And I would say in the public art world, I would add to that 100K. And I don't know, Pat and Brianna might disagree with me, but is not a massive budget in the public art world. I would think with good preparation and good consideration and maybe some, examples of pulled off installations or other, kind of works that an emerging artist could build up to 100K, application and it not be wildly outside of their reach as a first time applicant. The costs are high because public art is expensive because of the materials required, the collaborative work required, paying for engineers, all kinds of things that don't take place necessarily in other art avenues. And so I think there is a lot of opportunities that, maybe fall in that 75 to 150 range that may feel really high, but actually are open, could be good opportunities for early stage public artists or even first time public artists.
Okay. Could you speak to how to structure a portfolio for collaborative duo or team? Should we include collaborative work and individual work? I think,
Definitely.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I
Ally.
was gonna say the same thing. I think if you're applying as a team, it should be representative of your collaborative work. Yeah.
And you may include some of your individual work as well, but it would be really strong to show, if you have it, collaborative work. If you don't, I think you really need to do some work in the letter part to articulate how your aesthetics would relate to one another, how you envision collaborating together. But if you do have that, I think it's strong to show that.
In your experience, is it easier for selection panel members to read image annotations on/below the image itself or read the annotations in a separate file? I've seen both of these formats. I think it just depends on what the RFQ requirements are, because I've seen, portfolios that are required in like a contact sheet way where you have the image and then the description. I would say don't annotate your artwork image unless that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate this question because it also kind of speaks to, there's opportunities sometimes to craft a kind of I've seen portfolios done more as like PDF introductions where there might be an image and text and all kinds of things. And I think it can work sometimes, but it's risky that you might accidentally run afoul of what, some of the rules are. So to what Ally was saying, first and foremost, pay attention to what they're asking for. If they're saying we want 10 images, send 10 images. Don't turn them into PDFs and put text on them, etc. Really try to adhere to what the call is asking for on that first level. And then I think it might be fine to put the annotation at the bottom, if it is open, but unless it, there's calls where folks are asking for really inventive things. Now things are always changing, but I do think it's about adhering to what's being asked for and maybe interpreting that rather straight. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Someone said, I normally think about public art being for physical objects like sculpture, installation, architecture, 2D works. Have you seen any RFQs that involve performance, time-based mediums or mediums that fall outside of the above categories? Yes, I have.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think that's an area that's growing. Would you say, Ally?
Yeah, I agree. I would say that if you're specifically looking for those types, it definitely helps to narrow your search in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and though that often also exists in the temporary public art sphere. There's a lot of agencies that have done temporary public art for a long time. There's others that are introducing that into what they do. That often involves performance, but it has also expanded, as I mentioned earlier, we worked on the state of California's first ever digital collection. That's a permanent collection of digital artwork. I know West Hollywood has a digital collection that they're putting up. The opportunities around sound, I know the county also has opportunities now that include SoundWorks. So it's expanding, it's growing. And I think, as Ali mentioned, it's a great way to limit, it also tends to be smaller value. So if you're emerging into this field, that can be a really great place to start getting opportunities and build up to maybe a larger physical object with a higher commission value.
Mhm. Someone asked, on average, how many submissions for RFQs do people typically receive? And how many will be asked to submit or RFP?
Yeah. I think this is where I say, like, be patient, be kind, be understanding that this, there's other people involved in this, because there are by far more applicants than are going to be invited to the RFP stage. I'm not privy to everything. The ones that I have seen can be dozens to hundreds, let's say, of applicants. And the folks that are invited to participate in the RFP stage is typically 3 to 5. It may differ, it may be different, but that's a pretty big drop off in that first shortlisting. So the why we really focused on the RFQ today is partially because of that, because that is in space that is it takes some work to put your best foot forward. It takes some alignment of stars in some cases, but it is a competitive space.
Yes, I would add to that. Yeah, just not to get discouraged by the process, for whatever that's worth, because I really have seen artists, apply and just for whatever reason, the circumstances were different, and the panel was different who were, reviewing the applications and involved in the selection process. The project managers were different and they, were successful. So it just, I think the more, you stick with it, I think you'll find that not only does the process get easier because you develop, your own kind of shortcuts, and your understanding of the process grows. So the time often, is diminished each time because you get faster at it. But there's real growth and learning that can go through the process that I've seen a lot of artists experience and be successful. So there's a lot of factors involved, and it is worth sticking with it.
If you want to, it is I think
True,
that
if you want to, it's not for everybody.
yeah.
At this point.
And if you're not sure that that's a space you want to be in, I really think that's important because of exactly what Brianna was just saying. A little bit of fortitude that's required. Oh, Ali, we can't hear you.
I know we're coming up on time and I want to make sure we answer everyone's questions. So. Okay, the next question is, my art studio, shop and showroom are located at LA County, but I live in Orange County. Can I apply to the apprenticeship?
I cannot answer that right now. that is one of those questions, that definition of what constitutes a Los Angeles artist is not fully finalized, but it will be on the call.
So sign up for the PAiD info on the PAiD County website. So when it was released, you get it and you can read all about it.
Okay, could you let us know what is the link website where the recording will be available?
Not yet. That will be on the PAiD website, which I know, as Pat mentioned, is maybe not going to be available for another year. So I think we might need to talk internally about whether there's an interest or desire to have these hosted on the website somewhere else in the meantime. But that's an ongoing conversation. But if you have attended, we have your email address. We'll be sending e-blasts, and we can certainly make sure once the location for where these webinars are is defined, that we send out e-blasts about that.
For public works that exist within the realm of digital art, would you say you've noticed differences in the general requirements of applications than those of more traditional mediums? Any words of encouragement for a digital artist? I will say for digital media applications, I am surprised that they are somewhat similar, actually. It is just like they have RFQ requirements if you need to submit a statement of interest, you need to submit a CV, you need to submit a portfolio. I would say that the general differences are in the portfolio where you have different file types you need to submit. And the RFQ itself can be a bit different because they talk about certain specs of like where the artwork will live, and you need to make sure that you can comply with that, obviously. I would say that's where I've noticed the most differences.
Words of encouragement, keep going. The interest, no, but I mean, as it is a growing field, I think there are going to be more and more opportunities in this space coming available in the next 2 to 3 years. I definitely think you're going to see a lot more of this. I know Metro Art is rolling some out. I think there's going to be more opportunities for the digital artists out there in public art. People are realizing we have a lot of screens, we have a lot of digital space that are already there and available. And so I would definitely say keep going. It's going to get more opportunities are coming. And then also think about, again, how your work translates. I know we're short on time, but if you've made digital art for studio art or galleries, it might behoove you to spend a little time to think about how you would translate that to a context where maybe there isn't sound, if sound is part of your work, a context where it's shown on a really big scale and abstraction is kind of required. So I think pre-thinking about those things is smart.
And the last two questions, something that holds me back on public art RFQs is the process of going from your idea and fabrication to the person who checks to make sure the sculpture or objects are structurally sound, earthquake proof, that they aren't going to fall apart and injure a viewer. I have no experience working in engineering or with that kind of collaborator. Is that an engineer? Is that a collaborator the artist must supply?
Yes. So on that slide that we were talking about teams that come into play once you get past the RFQ stage and you're into the RFP, and sometimes even don't come into play till after you win a commission, is building that team. And one of the resources that we're working on in this range of workshops is resources around exactly that, is resources around, how to work with engineers. You are correct, that is an engineer. And it is typically a collaborator that the artist should supply. But we are going to talk about that in further design, in further iterations of these workshops. We are also going to sorry, I just lost my train of thought. anyway, yes, we are going to include that more about that type of thing in further workshops. But short answer is it is a collaborator you should supply, and it is an engineer. Yes. It's not as hard to work with as one might think. And I think, again, that's kind of the thing where some encouragement and some supports can go a really long way. Talking to somebody who may have done this before. We're also going to include our email at the end of this. And part of what we are, Dyson Womack does offer is support to artists. If you have questions and things, we are open to that, and you are welcome to email us and ask about resources.
And last question, what are your thoughts on asking for feedback from the commissioning agency if you learn you were not selected for the initial RFQ? I would say ask. We have received, artists reaching out, requesting for feedback, and we are always willing and open to sending our responses back. I think it's a really good learning opportunity for artists, and sometimes there's some insight that the selection committee might provide that you just had like no idea of.
Ask, and also just be patient, because it may take a minute for them to put that together and share it with you, but they will if they can. And I agree. I think any feedback is great. It helps to incorporate, to inform. It also challenges the commissioning agency to formulate their decisions and to speak to that. So I'm an advocate of ask as well.
Yeah, we definitely agree with that. We always are receptive to artists asking for follow-up, because ultimately, we want to support artists in getting meaningful feedback to help them improve for the next time, or just simply to say, you put together a wonderful application. The cards just fell where they did, and the panel loved it, but they selected somebody else, and so, but I think it is really important to ask. And just speaking from the project manager side, we're, in Civic are always receptive to providing that feedback.
Yeah. That is the end of our questions for tonight. Up on the screen right now is our info@dysonwomack.com. One thing I didn't say about this is we will be this program is iterative. We will be producing it again in the next calendar year and doing further workshops. So we'd love to hear from you about what we can do better, what other topics you might want to hear about that aren't on the agenda for this year's workshops. Any feedback, questions, we'd love to hear from you. We definitely want to make sure that what we're putting out here is useful, is helpful, and is reaching artists. So we really appreciate your attendance, your interest, and I hope that you will join us in future sessions and encourage friends and colleagues to join us as well. These again are the future sessions. If you've signed up for this one, you know where and how to sign up again, but just a reminder of as they come. And again, also thank you to Allie, thank you to Brianna, thank you to Pat for co-presenting and answering questions and supporting this work tonight. And thank you to all of you for participating, for asking your questions. I know even asking questions can be vulnerable sometimes, and I appreciate everyone in putting out what they are thinking and what they're concerned about and giving us the trust and faith to answer those questions. So I really appreciate that.
Okay. I think thank you everyone for joining, and have a good night.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Emily and Allie. On behalf of Civic Art and Department of Arts and Culture, we really appreciate you too. And thank you to all the artists who have attended.
Yes, thank you
A
so
lot to
much.
us. Thank you.
Thank you.